Hello and welcome to Cargo Masterminds presented by Cargo.one.
Cargo.one is a market-leading digital air freight procurement and sales platform. Trusted by over 20,000 freight forwarders in 134 countries, Cargo.one is the industry's go-to choice for the instant booking of airline and forwarder rates across more than 60 airlines. With Cargo.one, forwarders can search, compare, quote, and book capacity using thousands of live and static rates. Cargo.one equips all sizes of forwarder with the digital infrastructure to win more business, including cutting-edge solutions. Cargo.one for Enterprise offers an extensive range of API suites that deliver the strongest quality real-time market content. To discover how Cargo.one can empower your digital freight success, visit www.cargo.one.
Cargo Masterminds is our exclusive one-to-one weekly interview series with the leaders from the world's leading air cargo and logistic companies. My name is Reji John. Flexport was founded in 2013 as a go-to technology platform for global logistics and supply chain management. It helps businesses streamline their supply chains by offering various services that include freight forwarding, customs brokerage, and order management. Its platform integrates data from different parts of the supply chain, providing real-time visibility and control over shipments. Flexport works with companies of all sizes, helping them move goods efficiently through air, ocean, and land transportation. In this episode of Cargo Masterminds, I am delighted to have a conversation with Thomas Kempf, Flexport Senior Director for Global Air Freight Development. Thomas joined Flexport in April 2023 after having spent close to a decade with the Lufthansa Group in multiple roles. He has strong experience in operations, process optimization, air freight capacity management, and has the competency to navigate the global supply chain complexities. Thomas joins me from New York. Thomas, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Cargo Masterminds.
Likewise. Thanks for having me, Reji.
Thomas, what is your analysis of the current air freight market? Do you think that there is a gradual decline in demand after several months of positive growth?
I would say, looking at, first of all, 2024, of course, we had a phenomenal year for air freight. We saw solid growth numbers, right? That was largely driven by Asia Pacific as well as the Middle East. We saw then a bit of another picture when you went one level lower, right? From North America and Europe, we saw slower pace growth rates, actually, right? So overall, I think for 24, we can say it finished very, very strong. And as we all know, December actually marked the 17th consecutive month of growth, right? Having said that, looking now into the next year, are we going to take all that momentum with us? Only partially, right? And I think we'll have the chance to talk through a couple things here. Of course, there's some items that are really top of mind right now for everybody, but there's also a couple other things I think we have to mention. But just to wrap up on this question, I think looking ahead, there's different numbers out there. IATA is forecasting 6% increase in cargo volumes for this year. On our side, and we'll come to that, we expect it more to be between 4 and 6%. But overall, it's definitely going to be a slower pace than compared to the 12% that we've seen year on year in 2024 compared to 2023. And I would say, the key factors for that would definitely be the e-commerce uncertainty. We'll come to that. And of course, the economic factors that we are seeing already in December. We have seen the global manufacturing and the exports as well that actually slowed. The PMI showed, below that 50 benchmark, which is an important one to look at. At the same time, we saw inflation edging up both in the US as well as in Europe, 2.9% and 2.7% respectively. And then you have also China actually, indicating an economic slowdown with their inflation only being just around 0.1%. So overall, I think a sharp drop in demand, unlikely, right? Never say never, but unlikely. But the growth this year for air freight, for now, how it looks like, especially taking consideration what happened recently, may definitely plateau or only grow moderately.
What is Flexport's forecast for air freight demand for the rest of the year? We're already past the first one and a half months. Do you expect the momentum in the air freight demand, which has been strong, as we have already discussed for over a year, according to IATA numbers, does that continue into 2025?
Yeah, I mean, we find ourselves in a very high volatile market again, right? And having said that, I would think from our side, Flexport, we forecast a moderate but continued demand growth, right? As I already mentioned, I think it's pretty similar to aligned some of the things I'm going to say to the previous question, but getting a bit deeper in it for this one here, I think for the market outlook, we are still seeing demand has been resilient. High value goods, perishables, right? We've just seen the recent numbers out of South America again. And then also e-commerce still to some extent, and we'll talk about it later. So from a market outlook side, we have other exciting things, right? We have the AI tech, we got semiconductors, we got the raw materials that is required to make all these products, right? And they're going to play more so than ever a prominent role in air freight logistics. And that's not just for the servers and the computers, but also those electric cars, right? That are expected to grow exponentially in the years to come. So projection-wise, demand, we expect it to grow between 4 to 6%. And that's gonna, from our perspective, outpace the supply increase, which is gonna be, looks like less than 4%. And that's gonna create tight market conditions. And of course, this imbalance will keep the pricing as well as the capacity under pressure.
Thomas, what do you think are some of the most favorable factors for the air freight industry now and perhaps for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I think on that one, I see 4 key factors driving air freight growth. One is the e-commerce expansion. Yes, I say it first because right now we wouldn't maybe expect to say that, but we need to keep, the mid to long term and larger picture, I think, as well in mind, right? So e-commerce expansion is still top of my mind. We got the cross-border e-commerce that keeps on growing, right? And especially in developing markets, let's not forget there's still huge untapped potential there as well for air freight. And I think that will be definitely something where we're gonna see some growth. Technological advancements. We all know our air freight industry, right? It's all about people, which is great. At the same time, we have, taken a bit longer to adopt technology, and there are some, great players in the market that have contributed to this. And I think efforts from all of us in this space, right? Kudos to everyone in the air freight industry that has worked, especially in the past years, really much more on the technological side of things. AI-driven tools, digital platforms, they're going to help us, especially this year, it's going to double down. We're going to really feel it, making forecasting more accurate, streamlining operations, and also eventually, of course, improving the overall customer experience. And then the third one, I would say sustainability. Every airline, I speak to, they're investing heavily in sustainable aviation fuel and also fuel-efficient aircraft, multi-billion-dollar investments, sometimes in the case of many airlines. And that, of course, really puts them at the focus in their corporate strategy, making sustainability a core part, right? And if we're honest, right, that wasn't the case 5 to 10 years ago. So also very, very optimistic about that one. And lastly, I would say perishables and pharma, right? That is still, one of the key and very, very stable and growing as well segments, irrespective of economic downturns or not, right? You see that there's strong, healthy demand. Overall, the world population is still steadily becoming more wealthy, right? And that will just drive not just now, but in the next years, that demand for perishable and pharma products, as well as the temperature-sensitive goods, which we're also seeing year-on-year increases. So I would say all these factors, together, they really create that foundation for continued growth in air freight.
Now that we have discussed the tailwinds, what are some of the headwinds for the air freight industry?
Yeah, there are, as usual, lots of headwinds, right? That's what we are used to in this industry, and it's always about like which headwinds are the strongest and which ones can we neglect for now. So I would say, obviously, looking at the picture right now, the key challenges for air freight, in my opinion, are 3. One is regulatory challenges. So obviously those changes to the de minimis thresholds, the tariffs, and it's also stricter customs regulations that come with that. So that will increase costs as well as complexity. Then we got the geopolitical tensions that will probably talk later on as well, and at least I think it's connected to some of the other points. But that also, may disrupt demand on key trade lanes and also could create shifts of demand on short notice. And we have seen that, just in recent weeks. And then the capacity constraints, right? There's no way around it. I mean, this can be actually seen positive from an airline point of view to some extent, but negative for shippers. So you got those delayed deliveries of the new freighters. And if you couple that with, the uneven regional capacity recovery, right, that could, of course, tighten the market further. I think we all know those Boeing numbers that they recently released, but I think it makes sense to mention here, right? They, from their side, expect the air cargo market to still double by 2043. But at the same time, when you look at 2024 and the problems we're facing right now with, so 24, only saw 23 freighters delivered, while the backlog is still north of 110. And, this 777X program delivery, that is still delayed as well until, at least for now, until 28.
Thomas, let's slightly deep dive into cross-border e-commerce. One factor that actually helped air cargo volume in the last quite a few quarters. How optimistic are you about the cross-border e-commerce, and how concerned are you about the tariffs and the new US administration ending the de minimis exemption with China originating shipment that had so far allowed the flow of low-value shipment under $800 to the US duty-free? This had created a considerable spike in the cross-border e-commerce volume for air cargo. How does this change affect the air cargo volume on the trans-Pacific trade lane, and how does it change the fulfillment models for global e-commerce marketplaces?
Yeah. So overall, I'm still optimistic about cross-border e-commerce. And again, consumer demand keeps growing, especially in emerging markets like Africa and Southeast Asia. But of course, with the US removing the de minimis exemption and also increasing those or imposing those tariffs, compliance costs, are going up, and also those fulfillment models, they need to be adjusted. So I think I would say e-commerce is evolving, right? So those companies, they are shifting from direct to consumer air shipments more and more than to bulk imports. And by the way, it has been no surprise to the industry what is happening right now. I think many saw something coming, right? It was just not yet written in words, but it's not like people have not been, preparing for this. And many of the key players, we all talk to, I mean, they have done their homework, right? They have something in the drawers to work with, right? But still, right? I mean, we're gonna see those companies shifting from direct to consumer to bulk, also bonded warehouses, and also increasing their regional distribution hubs to manage those costs. At the same time, what we also have seen, and it's going to double down as well, is diversifying their supply chains, right? From the shipper side, Vietnam, India, Latin, those countries are becoming just stronger alternatives to China, right? And the challenge is also regulatory uncertainty, right? So de minimis is gone. Demand for small parcel air freight from China will drop quite quickly, right? It's going to take a couple of weeks to show in the numbers, but this means a capacity shift, right? It means new trade routes like the sea air that many customers have used already, particularly now with the Red Sea crisis that we've seen last year, right? Via Dubai, as well if you're looking at eastbound for Incheon, right? And different cost structures. So I would say really the key this year will be adapting fast while also keeping speed and cost efficiency intact. So technology, right, is really at the core of this, right? As well as, a strong logistics ecosystem. And that's what we at Flexport do best. And lastly, to address your impact on the air cargo volumes, I would break it up in the short, medium, and long term. I think on the short-term side, what we're going to see is a quick drop, for obvious reasons, in the small parcel air freight from China. And that's going to put pressure on rates. We already start seeing that as we speak. Then for the midterm, I mean, that's now depends a bit what's going to happen as usual, right? But if we assume that e-commerce shifts to bulk air freight, that will of course help demand to stabilize. And this is all, theoretically speaking, right? But those higher costs that still are going to be, created could still mean lower volumes through early 2025. Now, on the long term, there, I think it's sourcing will diversify, right? There's no way around it. We've seen it already in 2018, 2019 during the first Trump era administration. Companies have already started to diversify, and that's just gonna now speed up the process, so to speak, right? So Vietnam, India, other hubs, they grow, right? And those trade routes and capacity will shift. And I think if China US volumes decline significantly, the airlines, of course, they may also cut their capacity, and that actually could push rates back up later again, right? And lastly, the fulfillment models, there I really think companies that relied heavily on de minimis, they must rethink their strategy, right? You got the bulk shipping that I already mentioned. You got domestic fulfillment, holding more inventory, now in the case of the US, right? And then in regional hubs, right, to reduce your risk exposure. And that's actually in line with US administration plans, you know, to create more local jobs actually. And you also got bonded warehouses and free trade zones, right? So storing your goods duty free until they actually sell to manage your costs and the speed, right? So at the end of the day, agility will win.
Thomas, in all of this, how are you at Flexport reworking your relationship with key customers in light of rapidly evolving market dynamics, geopolitics, which are almost determined by geopolitics and its after effects such as war and tariffs and disruptions from nature like the consequences of climate change. So what is your conversation with your customers?
Yeah, I mean, to your question, right? There's lots of things happening in those customer conversations, that's for sure. I think, Reji, as we enter this new area that is driven by data, technology, and AI, there's one thing that remains constant, and that's really people are the foundation of those long-term relationships. And I think that's really key to point out here. And we have to keep on repeating that message as well across the industry. Now, while automation and the real-time insights, of course, are essential, the customer, like all of us, right? We're all customers somewhere, and we all value that human connection, right? It's great to have an app for something, but when things go wrong, the app just doesn't cut it, right? You just need somebody, you need a phone number, you need some human being that you can meet to give you that critical update during a disruption, or, you know, quite frankly, just simply sharing a coffee to celebrate a milestone in a business relationship, right? So I think to navigate all these like different market dynamics that we currently see, there's three things that probably everybody aims to do, right, with your customers, right? One is proactive communication, of course, and technology can help a lot with that, right? Because you can have technology helping you a lot on the real-time insights, as well as strategic recommendations, and then having more time to actually engage in that communication on a people-to-people basis. You got to have those tailored and flexible solutions, right? Multimodal transport, inventory management solutions, also being ready to diversify your trade routes and discussing that with your customers, and also having a way, of course, you know, to keep up with regulatory changes and those evolving risks that come with that. And they're, of course, also still the technology plus the human element together are very important. And last but not least, with our customers, being really a strong partner on the sustainability and the climate resilience, as we also like to, as they also like to say sometimes. We got those strict EU environmental regulations already in place. And so obviously working with our customers, you know, aligning on their sustainability goals, and also including, of course, carbon reduction strategies through our flexport.org business unit. So I would say overall, you know, combining the technology-driven insights with the strong human connection, that's the way to go forward to ensure your partnerships remain resilient, and then nothing, you know, no matter the challenge ahead.
You know, as soon as it became clear that Trump would be the next US president, and serious discussions began about him imposing tariffs on Chinese imports into the US, did you notice an increase in demand for air freight as US importers started stocking more inventory for items that would be subject to tariff?
Yes, I mean, Flexport observed a notable increase in air freight demand, probably like many others, as those US importers rushed to stock their inventory ahead of potential tariffs. So that was one thing. Now, looking at the historical trends, during already Trump's first presidency, those tariff announcements made back then triggered a surge in trans-Pacific air freight as well, same thing, front-loading shipments to avoid those higher costs. And it continues right now. We can see in the recent market reactions, following those de minimis changes as well as the new tariffs, when you look at the TAWB, so the transatlantic westbound particularly, those rates have risen, right? And that's partially due to the preemptive stockpiling in anticipation of those potential European tariffs. I think it's exactly that pattern actually that reflects again how those geopolitical shifts can actually drive fluctuations in air freight demand on short notice.
Thomas, how many Flexport branded freighters currently you operate, and are they all flying on the Trans-Pacific trade lane?
Yes, we have 3 branded 747 400F Boeing freighters, and they are certainly, to your point, primarily focused on the Trans-Pacific trade lane. They fly between our regional hubs of Incheon, PVG, and Hong Kong to Los Angeles and Chicago.
Mainland China to North America has been the biggest trade lane for Flexport. Do you think you will continue to see the same rate of growth in this trade lane, or have you noticed a diversification of traffic away from China to Vietnam and other Southeast Asian countries?
So mainland China to North America has been the largest trade lane for Flexport, but also for the industry as a whole, I would say. So, however, right, since that first wave of Trump-era tariffs in 2019, businesses have been forced to actively start looking for alternatives, and many have started diversifying their sourcing to places like Vietnam, Thailand, and other Southeast Asian countries, as well as the Indian subcontinent, right? That one is also showing strong growth and also much potential. And obviously, Flexport is making strategic investments in these emerging markets to support that shift. Now, e-commerce, of course, on this topic, you can not go with answering that question without mentioning it, right? It has been a key driver of this trade lane. The numbers that we all know in this industry, right? 100 daily 777 freighters between China and the US just for that e-commerce demand. And of course, these de minimis changes and the new tariffs on Chinese export are expected to impact rates and as well as that demand, right? As we discussed already. So I would say, in summary, from China to the US, the air freight definitely will see a slowdown, while we're going to see a stronger growth from Southeast Asian countries as well as the Indian subcontinent, right? As those companies are continuing to diversify their sourcing strategies.
Do you have cargo originating from India into your network, either through Hong Kong or through Shanghai?
So as of now, obviously, India is a big market for us. We do not direct any cargo via the hubs that you just mentioned, so not Shanghai and Hong Kong. What we are working much more on is direct uplift out of India. So for us on the air freight side, at least, there's no need to reroute anything right now. But you're mentioning an important point, right? And that is, and that's probably worth another conversation even, the still lack of access for the opportunity size that India actually represents, the lack of actual sufficient air freight capacity in India on a point-to-point basis. You still have a high reliance on foreign carriers, right? The local airlines are doing their homework now, right? And we're going to expect there some major growth as well on the probably also main deck capacity. But for now, right, let's stay real, right? India is still highly reliant on Middle Eastern and also other foreign carriers, and that has of course not helped much the air freight business out of that region this year, because we had the Red Sea crisis, forced some of the goods via Dubai, to your point of other hubs maybe, so via vessel to Dubai, and then onto those carriers. And of course, that cargo was treated as direct cargo and was then, of course, also more important from an airline point of view as the India transit shipments, right? Landing in Dubai as well. And that, of course, then led to that great rate hikes, right? Which doesn't help, of course, India's competitiveness when it comes to air freight rates out of India. So I think, to your point, India, definitely an interesting one, but for us, Shanghai, Hong Kong, no.
Also, what kind of new trends do you notice in terms of shifting demands in for air freight capacity, new types of cargo commodities coming on board, and what are your customers asking for?
Yeah, I think one thing that has been quite strongly present in customers' conversations when they're looking not just now but into how they can optimize their supply chains has really been them trying to reduce their carbon footprint. And with that, air freight, of course, is top of mind. And I do see this trend accelerating, more and more customers saying, hey, how can I use technology to, still hit certain KPIs, to find out how to, still hit certain KPIs, make my supply chain work the same way, but reduce my carbon footprint. And so I think it's lots is about that conversation. Besides that, some key trends, and there would be three that I would call out. One is high-tech shipments, obviously, right? We've seen increasing demand for rapid transport of these components, as well as the raw materials related, especially also to battery production. Then on the sustainability side, as I mentioned, right, that's the one right now that is on top of mind, and also the diversification. So customers they want support, right, on finding new shipping options to mitigate their risks, right? So you got the sea air solutions that I mentioned, but you also got those premium fast vessel services that are definitely another alternative in regards to this.
Thomas, how critical is the main deck freighter capacity for global trade, and how serious is the access to main deck capacity today? Because we also have been noticing that the availability of main decks or freighters are very limited. So going forward, how important is freighter capacity, main deck capacity for global trade?
Yeah, I think nothing has changed in that regard. Freighter capacity remains absolutely critical. It still makes up 41%. These are the latest numbers of total air cargo capacity, right? With 59% being in the bellies. Obviously, those delays in new freighters, make the industry relying more and more on existing fleets, and we know a large chunk of these fleets are reaching retirement age. And many of them are also still 4-engine aircrafts, which in light of some fuel price increase as well, are probably going to see even quicker retirement, potentially even as early as this year, combined with some slowdown maybe on the e-commerce side. So I think that's really gonna create an environment where main deck capacity will still be, and access to that will be a key challenge to one extent or another, right? I would say overall, the real issue is not whether the freighters are needed. They clearly are, right? But how fast the manufacturers can actually deliver those aircrafts. So we look at the networks actually of freighters. They're heavily focused right now on China and Southeast Asia. But that could change, right? I mean, when you look at those tariff policies and also the minimus restrictions, it's already pushing companies now to diversify their sourcing, as we already discussed, and freighter capacity will need to adjust to that, right? And that, of course, could on one side create bottlenecks, but also new opportunities in different regions. So I would say overall, access to freighter capacity will remain tight. And also any major shift, in global trade policies could actually reshuffle the air cargo networks once again.
Thomas, technology has been at the core of Flexport since its founding technology platform of global logistics. How do you believe you are harnessing the full potential of modern technology tools to automate documentation, drive efficiency, and optimize resources? Do you agree that the movement of cargo is as important as the efficient movement of information?
Well, when you break it down, global logistics is really about three flows, right? You got the goods, you got the cash, and you got the data. And what we at Flexport have done is really to build an intuitive and easy to use platform that gives everyone involved in a shipment, and not just the shipper, the real-time accurate information from a single interface. There is no switching between logins that exists, right? No lost passwords, no endless emails. or phone calls as well, trying to track down updates. It's one shipment, one flow of information, goods and cash. And that's all accessible to the right people when they need it. So I think that is first and foremost really what technology should do, and that's what we have been since we were founded trying to solve. And we of course have done lots of work on that. So our goal has always remained very simple. We like to say, make trade globally so easy that more of it happens, right? And think of it like a light switch. Literally a light switch, right? You turn it on when you need it and it just works, right? It taps into the network and it gets the electricity it needs and it just works. And that's exactly, in a very simple way, how we envision global logistics to function, and what we're working very hard on. I think another key part of what makes this really work for Flexport and has led to this tremendous growth for a company that has only been around for slightly over a decade is that we build all our software and code in-house. So we're not relying on any external suppliers. We also don't have to struggle with outdated legacy systems. Everything is literally built as one seamless system. And also making sure that we can connect to all the other systems that our customers have already in place, to make it as easy for them to integrate all of the information in one user interface. But I think, talking so much about technology, I think it's just important that we never forget the human-centric approach. Logistics, we mentioned this a bit earlier, right? We discussed it. You can't just look at the tech, right? And we all know this in this industry. So I think what really sets Flexport apart, if I may say in this regard, is the human-centric approach combined with this technology, right? The tech is powerful and it's getting even better this year, but technology alone is just not enough, right? So we believe the real magic really happens when you have great people that are behind it. They can use it, monitoring your shipments, solving problems proactively before the customer even sees them, and making sure that just everything runs smoothly. And that it's very intuitive also for the new generation that comes into this industry to basically, switch on a light switch, right? That's very intuitive. You know this from a very young age. Global logistics should be like that, and that's what we're looking for. And so speaking of tech, I would definitely recommend to stay tuned for some big AI announcements that we're going to make on February 24th.
Thomas, it's such a fascinating discussion. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure is mine. Thanks for having me, Reji.
That was Thomas Kempf, Senior Director, Global Air Freight Development at Flexport. I hope you enjoyed watching this interview. Review us, rate us, and share us wherever you can. And more important, if you're not a subscriber of our YouTube channel, please do subscribe now and click the bell icon so that you do not miss any of our new videos. An audio podcast of the series is available on Spotify and on Amazon Music. I highly recommend you to check them out. Join me next Monday for another episode of Cargo Masterminds presented by Cargo.one. Until we meet again, have a great week ahead. Thank you.